Brian, let's talk about it. I'm here with Susan Johnson and Matt Rupar, and we've got a really great guest tonight. He's been on a few times in the past, and this is a real good and important time for him to be on now because we're in the middle. Well, we're almost finished. We're almost done with the budget season, the town budget season. That is a big deal. That is one of the most important functions of local government. You got to fund the government somehow. It doesn't. It doesn't work if you don't have some money. And anyway, Jim Rivers, our town manager, and also the chief executive officer of the Willimantic Taxing District, which covers police and fire in Willimantic. He is with us, and he's going to be talking about with us. He's going to be talking about the budget referendum coming up, and it's going to be on the 14th of May, right, Jim?
Yes, thank you both for having me. I love your show, and I love to be here, and it's a great way to communicate, especially when we have things, great accomplishments, but of course, like this time of the year, as you mentioned, we have the budget. So we want to inform the public as much as we can so they can make a good decision when they vote. As you mentioned, Dennis, we do have in Windham a mandatory referendum. I think we're one of the few towns of our size that have that mandatory referendum. It's usually something you might see with the smaller towns. But we do have it, and leading up to that, starting in about January, we start meeting with all the different department heads of the town. I have 20 department heads that work under me. As you mentioned, the city departments also report to the town manager in Windham. And so they start putting their numbers together in worksheets, and then we start sitting down in February and hashing it out. And then I have to present it to the town council first. Another thing we have unique in Windham is we have a town manager. We have 11-member board town council. We have a 7-member board of finance, and we have a 6-member board of directors for the Willimantic Taxing District. So we've got all of the layers of, I'll say, checks and balances, and then some. So we have to start early. So we start in February with the council, a first presentation. They have a few weeks to get those budgets together. By middle of March, they have to report to the Board of Finance with their budget, as well as the Board of Education, which is not something that I have to deal with, but we're working in parallel towards that March 15th date where the Board of Finance receives the budgets from us. And then the Board of Finance has been for the last month or 5 weeks. They're working over the budgets. They're looking at them, asking lots of questions, asking for data and different reports. And they then act and create a budget or set a budget for the townspeople to consider on that referendum. So we have done all of that. We have gotten to the point where we have numbers that we can present to the voters. So that's the process.
Well, thank you for that explanation, Jim. And, this is Susan Johnson, and I think that's a great explanation. Did you leave out the Willimantic Taxing District Board when you discussed
Yes.
it?
So they kind of act as the Board of Finance and the council for the Willimantic Taxing District. So they get their budget about the same time as the Board of Finance at middle of March, and then they start working. Same thing. So we're working, again, the Board of Finance is working alongside the Willimantic Taxing District and also the First Taxing District, which is the Windham Village areas. They have fire and library and a few other things out there. So, yes, I have to work both of those teams of elected officials and get them whatever they need, and they have to come up with some numbers. So they both have set their numbers as of last night. And, Dennis, you're on the Willimantic Taxing Board, Board of Directors, and you were there.
I was there. I was
there,
right.
Yeah.
I was in the room. I had a seat at the table.
Yes, he did. He ran for that, and he actually, you have a few sessions back when you were the chair of the Charter Revision Commission, worked on creating that special taxing district, and then for the Willimantic Service District, because back when I was on the Board of Selectmen, which is now called the Council, we addressed all the budget items, whether it was the town or the Willimantic, taxing district, which is the police and fire, the paid police and fire, and then the first taxing district would just address the things that they want to do in the villages, North Wyndham, South Wyndham, Wyndham Center, and they actually address the volunteer firefighters and also other things like they have a softball league and the library and that sort of thing. Libraries, actually. So it's one of those things that we've changed a little bit, and maybe Dennis, you might want to just talk a little bit about how you're on that Willimantic Service District Taxing Board now, and just a little bit about how this new change is working.
Well, that started a few years ago, and originally it was the way it was set up by a prior Charter Revision Commission, which I did chair also. We set up a special taxing district board for the city of Willimantic, namely police and fire, paid police and fire, and originally the members were all the elected members of the town council who were from Willimantic. And there were some concerns raised about that by some people from the Wyndhams and one person in particular, but I won't name him. But in any event, maybe he was right. I don't know. But anyway, we decided that at our last charter revision that we would limit it to people who were not members of the town council from Willimantic. So starting this year, because we had to wait for people who were elected previously for their terms to expire, but starting this year, starting in November, actually starting last year, November of 2023, all 6 members of the Taxing District Board are elected independently. And we have 6 members, and Nectalis Martinez is the chairman. He's a holdover member, actually. He was on the town council but did not run for re-election this term. And he is the chairman of the group. I'm the vice chairman, and we have other members. We have 2 members of the Green Party, Doug Larry and Mike Westerfield, and we have 2 new members from the Democratic Party, Jared Leitzel and Adam Richardson. And it's a great group, and we have been able to agree on most everything with the tremendous help we have gotten from the town, and mainly in the person of our town manager, Jim Rivers. And we finished our work last night. We voted on a budget to send to the town meeting. There has to be a town meeting under the charter. It was something that I thought was a vestigial agency that probably should have been eliminated, but because there's no vote taken at this meeting. That's on the 7th of May, and if people want to come, I think it's at 6:30, Jim, on the May 7th for the Taxing District Board. And if people want to come, that's fine. We'd be glad to discuss the budgets with them and for the city and answer questions. But historically, ever since the meeting was being held without a vote, attendance at the meeting has not been great. But we do want people to attend the vote on the 14th of May, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. We want everybody to vote, everybody who's eligible, and that would be people who are registered voters in the town of Wyndham, and also people who who live in the town of Wyndham and own property valued at more than $1,000, even if they're not registered to vote. So we want everybody to vote on Election Day, May 14th. That's referendum day. Right, Jim?
Absolutely. And like you said, we have a full slate of meetings, but many of them don't serve a purpose as far as setting the numbers. They're more of a question and answer if there are any questions. I would make a note, that Dennis, that we both bodies had public hearings as we do every year. I think at least the hearing for the town is required. The city has been a tradition, but we couldn't really find that written anywhere. But we do it anyway because it's a great idea. But those hearings did not yield a lot of comments this year. In fact, I say the only people that commented at any of those meetings were, I'd say, elected officials that just wanted to come into the other group and have a quick comment to them. That is unusual. If you go back to when I started about 7 years ago, we sometimes have a room full of people at these hearings, and now gradually in the last 7 years, there's been fewer and fewer people attending these meetings. which is actually a good sign. It usually means in most towns that there's a great deal of confidence that all the elected boards and commissions, or the elected boards and the council, are doing their job, and that they feel comfortable that they don't need to come in and start, managing their elected people. So that's the good news. The bad news is we don't get any feedback, so we're flying blind here. We don't know how everybody feels about the budgets, but usually when nobody comes out to have any complaints, abstention is acceptance, I guess, when it comes to the budgets generally.
Well,
so that's one
I
note.
just want to make a comment about that, and you make a remarkably good point there, Jim. And I think that, but when you think about all the, interaction that all these boards have with the board, not board of selectmen, but the council now, the finance board, the board of education, the Willimantic Service District Board, and then you've got the board, First Taxing District Board. All these boards are communicating about the budget in addition to working with the staff. That's a lot of people if you count it up. That's a lot of people who are working hard to make sure that everything works in terms of what money we're getting in, what money we have in terms of revenue from local property taxes, and how we're managing how the town looks. And the town looks very good. We're taking care of the students with the school buildings, and the town is taking care. The town does that, but it's working in conjunction with the Board of Ed, and then also the actual buildings that we have that are being renovated here all throughout the town. And so I think people are looking at the fact that the money that's coming into the town is working well for the people.
Yeah, I think especially in recent years, most everyone in town sees the value of the expenditures and the capital investments that we've made, and the return on that investment for their property values, for their quality of life in the town, for the reputation of the town. And we talked about this many years ago that, it turned the reputation around of the community, and that's when people start coming back and they invest and they live here and they want to raise a family. And I think we've really turned that corner, and it was more than evident in the recent revaluation that we had, and we had a great increase in values, and I think everybody saw it coming. I think there was no surprises to most property owners that they have created a great deal of shareholder value, as I call it, in their homes. And that also helps. I think people think that they don't mind paying taxes generally as long as they got something. They don't want to pay high taxes. Our mill rate used to be almost 50 mills, or it was over 50 mills there for a short time. And then your values are very low, some of the lowest in the state. That hurts. That really feels bad. And now I think, we'll get into the numbers here before I leave, I think, today. But, he's talking about a mill rate that is being proposed for the town at 27 and change, versus, the city and the town being over 50. So we're adjusting that mill rate down, of course, because of the reval. That is a huge shift. And it's a shift that also the outside world sees, because some investors look at the mill rate. They want to come here to invest. If the mill rate's off the charts, they're like, I don't want to go there. I'm going to have huge tax bills. And they see that mill rate down in the more towards the average of the state, like I think we are now, and especially for an urban center like we are. That's a pretty low mill rate for a city, small city, and the demographic, the incomes and things that we have, which are generally low. In the property taxes that we don't collect on almost half of our real estate, so that's a handicap as well. But we still have a pretty low mill rate after this reval, finally, after all these years. So there's a lot of good things happening, and all these things contribute. You made a point, too, I want to just address. I have 24 bosses, okay? I think that's a record, too, in the state, because I have 11 council members, 7 Board of Finance, and 6 on the board. Like you mentioned, they're all talking to each other. They're out in the community talking to the community. So one advantage of that is you have a lot of coverage. You have a lot of coverage to communicate what is going on, why we're doing it, and that does help when it comes to passing things.
It absolutely does. And the other thing I like to just emphasize, you did mention it, but higher the property values, the lower the mill rate. And I think that's another thing that businesses look at when they look to invest in a community. They'll know that the value of the property that they're investing in is valued higher in that region. And so that's one of the things that people need to really understand, because people think their bills will go up if their value goes up. But as a general rule, whatever it costs to manage the town hasn't gone up that much, so the bill isn't going to go up that much. But when the value of the property is really high, the mill rate goes down, and it inspires more investment.
Well, for most people, from what I'm told, what I've learned, their home is their most valuable asset, and for the, given all the construction, public construction that's gone on in the last 6 or 7 years. Got the community center, the new parking garage, the Shabu stage, and the high school is the jewel in the crown, which is going to be finished up within a year or so, and maybe less. And people who have been there, I haven't been in it for a long time, but they say it's fabulous. And I'm sure that is attracting. There's a lot of homes being sold, bought and sold in this town, sold and bought in this town, and the people that are selling are getting their money's worth, and that's wonderful. So people's homes are valued where they should be, and a lot of it has to do with the improvements in town, and it's the springtime. In the springtime, you go around town and you see people out there working on their homes. Doing little fix-up jobs, mowing their lawns, trimming their hedges, doing all kinds of good things in the springtime. And right now it's more evident than ever because people really love being here. It's a great place to be. People have always loved it, but they've complained a lot about certain things, and and one of them is their home values. But that's improved and changed a lot. So we're a much more attractive town, not only to businesses, but to people who may want to move here and have their kids go to school and attend a new, a renovated as new high school, for example. And there's talk about a new elementary school. So this is a community that's on the go, on the rise. And it's, I think it's reflected in the attitudes that people have towards the town government and all the town government has done to make that happen. And we'll see what happens on May 14th, but I'm looking forward to passing all the budgets again, like we have in the past few years, because people are very, very happy about what's going on here.
Yeah, this town has had a history, a terrible history, honestly, and it goes. All these things go hand in hand, right? And I think you just hit it. Susan hit it. They all mesh together, and not passing budgets. It has an effect. It's a cause and an effect, right? It causes you a lot of grief because you don't have a spending plan, and I think this town at times went 6 months without a spending plan. That is chaotic, and chaos is not what the bond market wants to see. So you get higher rates when you go to borrow. It's not what people coming here want to see, or businesses. You lose in efficiency from your capital money now gets stale, and inflation could bite into it a little bit. So there's a whole bunch of consequences to not passing budgets, never mind the direct costs of having these referendum over and over again. But again, we're not doing that anymore. And I think you mentioned it, Dennis. We were, as we were inching towards COVID, it was getting easier to pass budgets. But after COVID, we had a couple years there where we didn't vote in person. The Board of Finance took care of the budgets. But then these last two cycles, I think the last budget, we passed it by 2-1 almost. And that is incredible for a town with our history. But all these things go hand in hand. Look at our neighborhoods, and you just touched on it. You drive around in our town now, and it's pretty nice in just about every neighborhood. There aren't too many neighborhoods left that need a good facelift. Everybody has pride in their homes, and that goes hand in hand with the infrastructure, better schools, all those things, lower mill rates, all those things are really clicking together, and I don't see it stopping. I think we've got a lot of momentum. We got a lot of good projects. We only got about half these ARPA projects done. We're going to really give a facelift to all of our rec parks. I think we talked about that the last time I was on. And it's more is coming, folks.
Yes, it
it's
is.
still coming.
I gotta say that's great, and I want to just also give a shout out to the code officials who are enforcing the codes, and the fact that we now have really enough code officials to actually make sure that the codes in the housing and the areas that people are living in are we have so few places to have to do the enforcement with, that our code officials are able to keep up with the work so much better, and they're really very efficient at that. So I do want to make sure that we give a shout out to our code officials for making sure our neighborhoods are looking good, making sure that the properties, when people call our code officials, that they come out and they work with the owners of the properties to try and figure out what the best way to move is. And nothing could be nicer than what Eastern did on the corner of Prospect Street, which is really a fabulous job. And I have to say thank you to Eastern for making that property look really good now. It's really helped that neighborhood.
Yeah, another example of investment that the town made, and decisions the town made even before I got there, they created a blight fund. So we fine people pretty heavily if they don't address the issues that we bring to them. And that money goes back into a fund to go right back out to either, tear down homes or provide the attorneys that we need to put pressure on people to fix things they should be fixing. But what's happening, and it just happened probably in the last year, we're collecting data on the number of complaints that we receive. We're starting to see it turn the other way, where the number of complaints are going down. So that is a sign that, the standards haven't gone down, because I think people are fussier than ever, which is great too. But that now there's less to complain about. At least it meets our code and ordinance for blight. So it's all working just like everybody hoped it would many years ago. It takes a long time sometimes to see the results from the investment. And I think that is an example with, you could look, another big example is the police department. For, that investment was really started, I call it the Dan Rather era. But 20 years ago, the city decided we got to put some money into this. We got to fix this. And that has paid great dividends as well. So the crime rate's down, and that fits right into everything else we've talked about. But I couldn't be prouder to be the town manager in this town. I'll tell both of you that.
Well, I want to thank you for your work and the staff as well, because I know you're there working real hard to make sure that Wyndham's in great shape, and I appreciate that very much. And plus, it's really great to have staff people we can communicate with as a state legislator. I really enjoy being able to communicate with all the members, the elected members on the boards and commissions, but also with the staff members, so we can work on things that we can try and fix in terms of how the state works with the town. And the state people that I have to work with are excellent. They've been spot on in terms of being able to connect with them. And I have a great speaker. We have a wonderful President pro tem of the Senate and a great governor. So we're really, working together on so many things. Of course, nobody agrees on every single thing, but as a general rule, we're working together, and we're doing a good job.
Speaking of working together, I've been involved in local politics in different ways for more than 40 years, and I don't think I've ever seen the people in town, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, Green, Independent, or whatever, working together as closely and as in such a civilized and a civil fashion. Working together, and I think the Congress could take lessons from us, and it could also take lessons from the people in the legislature, I think, to some extent. Although on our local level, our Board of Education, and I've worked in a lot of towns in this area, and one thing that is almost typical in towns around the state is that boards of education and town councils, or town halls, so to speak, are usually at loggerheads, and they usually do not get along that well. They see themselves as in competition with each other, and they find ways to disagree in some of the most unusual ways I've ever seen. Nothing surprises me anymore. But I got to tell you, in this town, we've got a situation where our town government, our town hall government, and our superintendent of schools and board of education, town council, board of finance, everybody's working together. It's never been like this before. I've never seen it like this before, and it really, really bodes well for the town of Wyndham, no question.
Absolutely, Dennis. I'm just thrilled to be able to continue the work that everybody's doing, and it's great to have the communication channels wide open. So when somebody needs something, we can go. I can go to the town if I want some information about what's going on, or they can come to me about legislation that we're passing or laws that we've already passed, how we do our budget. All those things at the state level have a big impact locally, and having both the local and the state understand how they gel together is really important, and it's something I've been able to communicate to the council and to the Board of Finance and to the Board of Education, and because there's a lot of complexity in all those different budgets. So we're running up to getting a few minutes from our sponsor to help pay for the show. So this is Susan Johnson with Dennis O'Brien and our very special guest this evening, Jim Rivers, the town manager of Wyndham. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back, everyone. This is Susan Johnson, and I'm here with my co-host, Dennis O'Brien, and our very special guest this evening, Jim Rivers, the town manager for Wyndham. So we were talking about a number of things with respect to the budget, and you have some more things that you want to present here today, right, Jim?
Yeah, we talked about the budgets in general, the schedule in the first half of the show, and I guess I'd like to get into some of the details. I'm sure people that are listening would like to hear, what's about to happen or what they're voting on. So again, just in general, this year's a special year. Every 5 years, we reevaluate all the properties in town. And as you had mentioned in the first half, that doesn't necessarily mean your value going up. Doesn't necessarily mean your taxes are going up. So what happens is the average of all those values going up kind of recalculates the mill rate, and we've dropped it down substantially to where the averages of all the property, would have brought it up or brought up the value, and then the tax number goes down. So the good news is that we're not raising taxes a whole lot from that base number. The expenditures are up a little bit in both the Board of Education, the town, and the city, but we do have some good news there to offset that. But when I want to say about one last thing about reval. It's really a shift in value, so it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to pay more just because your house is worth more or your business. It means there might be a shift. So sometimes there's no shift. Everybody kind of goes up at the same rate. This time the shift occurred that we had like the mobile homes and the manufactured homes, condominiums, and the small multifamilies, the 2, 3, 4 families, they went up more than the average. Now, if you go back to 5 years ago, it was the opposite, where commercial property went up more than the residential properties. And in fact, the residential properties last time, I think, was pretty flat and somewhere down. But this time, they have gone up more than the average. So on average, you have more value in your home if you have a manufactured home or a mobile home than you did 5 years ago. And I think most people understand that. And that means there might be a shift towards them, where businesses that got hit pretty hard 5 years ago might see a little relief or have different types of business property. So that's the reval. But then we get into the budget. So the budgets are different than reval. The budgets occur with expenditures that we have, and then we have revenues that offset those expenditures. We get a lot of money from the state, thanks to Susan and May and all the other people that work hard to bring Wyndham their due, because we have challenges that maybe other communities don't have. But in recent years, we've been very successful on the grant side of things from the state. Thank you, Susan. And we have more money going to the school system. And also, a few years ago, we got a big increase in pilot payment in lieu of taxes, because a lot of our property is state property in the town and hospital. And we get money from the state to help with that, what would have been taxation that we can't tax them. So a couple years ago, I think about 3 years ago, we saw a big boost there that really helped, and we had lowered taxes then in the city. I think 3 mils. The tax rate went down 3 mils. We gave it back to the people. We didn't just spend it. Another reason we're probably passing budgets, by the way, is I think people really appreciate that we didn't just try to spend all that money. We gave it back to the people.
I just want to.
Really helped. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, please.
Oh, I just wanted to give Dennis credit for the work that he did with the payment in lieu of taxes, because he went around to all the towns that had the same kind of thing that we have here. What we do here is we serve the region and we serve the state, because we don't get a chance to collect the taxes on the state properties and on the nonprofits in some circumstances. And so we do not get property tax in those situations. The towns around us, except Mansfield, that has a lot of pilot as well. All the towns around us, none of them have that kind of thing that they do for the region, that they do for the state. And so as we move forward, and one of the things I like to stress on these shows is the fact that we serve, and we should be paid for the service we give to the state. We should be paid for the service that we give to the region. With the nonprofits that are here doing great work, helping the people, they're here in the group homes, the hospital that does great work and is a fabulous emergency room, and it's a wonderful hospital, and we want to make sure people understand that they get great service here. We have Eastern Connecticut State University. We have the community college. We have the tech school. We have an airport. We have 3 nursing homes. We have all these things. The Federally Qualified Health Center and Veterans Services, Social Security is here. The Department of Children and Families is here. Department of Social Services is here. All these programs are here, and we serve the state and the region with these programs here. And it costs the people who live here. But because if the state makes the right investment, the property taxes will be also going down more, because the state pays for its share. It pays for the share of the things that the other towns don't have to burden. They don't have that burden. Nevertheless, we have a caring community here. We have a welcoming community here. We want to provide the services. We just want to be treated like the servers that we are. We're doing great work for everybody in the state and the local community. I want to make sure we get that clear and understood by the towns that don't have these situations to address.
Very good point. And I'm so sorry, Dennis, because I think you were on a special committee for that, to increase that pilot as well, right? To push more money towards these the poorer towns, and we being one of them.
Yeah, that's a long story, but I was part of a committee. It included mostly big city mayors, actually, Luke Bronin and others.
Elliker.
Mayor Elliker from New Haven. We used to meet at his office, and we went over this for many meetings. And Mayor Elliker contacted Marty Looney, the President Pro Tem of the Senate, and Marty put in a bill to make it so that we have a 3-tier pilot system, and the first tier gets paid a higher percentage of the value of the projects that are eligible for pilot. And I just want to emphasize that not all tax-exempt property is eligible for pilot, but fortunately the hospital and the university are. Not everything here is. There's a lot of small nonprofits that we get nothing for. We get no taxes. We get no pilot. But in any event, we were able to get a higher pilot rate for the university and for the hospital, among a few others, because of this group that got together and worked on this. And I played a major role in getting the group together, along with Dawn Niles and Charlie Critch backed me up on it. They were supportive of an effort to try to get CCM to create this group, and we did create the group. And I was a member of the group, and I was on the town council, and we were successful in, increasing the amount of pilot money for towns like ours, Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, New Britain, Waterbury, towns like, and New London. Norwich. But we got a lot more, but I'll tell you what, Hartford and New Haven and Bridgeport, they got a lot more money because they're bigger. Their pilot money is greater, and they got a lot of money in dollars. But we did get a big increase, and that's helped a lot. And there's been a lot of other things that are being done to try to improve the situation. And if I had my way, the towns would get pilot for every tax-exempt property in town.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, Dennis, because I put in bills. I try to put in bills every year ever since we got this one done, and to add all the properties that are tax exempt to the payment in lieu of taxes statute, which is $1.6 billion. Now, you know, they kind of just looked at me like, said, okay, Johnson, yeah, right. So, but I'm going to still work on it, and I'm still going to try and get out there and at least let everybody know. The big thing is to let everybody know how we're subsidizing the state. We are subsidizing the state for the nonprofits, for the universities, for the hospitals. This is a subsidy from those towns in which these places are, and for the properties that are not taxable. And the state legislators, especially in the wealthier districts, just can't resist adding another tax-free opportunity to make. If you want to give tax-free opportunities, let me just say this. I'll vote for them if you make the state pay for them. I'm not wild about making just the towns pay for it. And we need to make sure people understand what they're doing when they add more to the properties that do not get any payment in lieu of taxes or anything at all. So that is something that we need to continue to make sure we march around the state and let people know how we're taking care of them, and that they're getting a free ride because of the towns like Hartford, Bridgeport, Waterbury, Wyndham, Norwich, and London, and they're getting that free ride because of us.
Yes, I agree with everything you both said, and I appreciate the work that you've done that have made budgets easier in these trying times. And that brings me to my next point, which is we've had a lot of inflation, and that pilot money and all that work that was done for years came along right about the time we got hit with this huge inflation the last few years with wages. The markets are very tight, especially the municipal markets, tighter than other markets, job markets. So we're getting through that. So our budgets, just in a summary, we have increases in expenditures are offset in the general government budget, more than offset by other revenues. Again, we're getting lots of revenues from different places. Our department revenues continue to be up with all the activity. We're getting more interest on our investments because, of course, interest rates are higher, but we have more investments now. So we're seeing more investments there. We've put money aside to help with all the debt service that we've got from all these projects we talked about. You got to pay for them, but we put money aside anticipating the day when we would have more payments. So that money is helping us to offset taxes. So the summary here for you is in the general government budget, we're down. We're down on an equalized mill rate based on the reval. We're going to be down 0.36 mils. The Board of Education is going to be up 1.32 mils, and that nets out to be 0.96 mils, or a fraction of a mil higher. And that's, again, an equalized mill rate. We drop it down. So here's the mill rate. The mill rate would be 27.89 mils after the reval, after the increase in expenditures offset by revenue. So a considerably lower number than we've seen in the past in our town. And again, we continue to be successful offsetting expenditures with all types of revenues. And that's what, we talked about. We dreamed about this years ago, that if we succeeded enough, any of these increases, to have a great team, to have all these capital improvements would be offset by the return on investment. And we were literally seeing that with direct revenues. Over to the city, we have a little different picture. Again, increases in wages, pensions, insurance, as usual, to try to hit this inflation. And by the way, we have to catch up with inflation too, because the government, we're building budgets that are a year to a year and a half out. So we're still making up for inflation that was sort of behind us that we didn't have a budget for in the past. So it's not just that inflation is bad now. It might have been bad last year. We didn't put enough money in the budget to cover it. So in the city, we have such a situation where we have to give our fire and police officers raises. We gave a pretty good package to our firefighters. We had to a couple of years ago, and now we're still paying for some of those increases. You phase them in. And then the police department, we had to give those folks raises because they were getting picked off by other police departments. So anyway, the bottom line for the city, with a small addition, as Dennis mentioned, of a community service officer to help with the freedom of information requests that we get a lot more of now because of the way the world is, and the body cams and all the dash cams, people have more to ask for. So that costs money to retrieve that data when people have the right to see it, and we have to go retrieve it. So anyhow, we added a little position there, but that wasn't a whole big increase in the budget, mostly the wages and inflation. We're going to see a mill rate increase after we normalize it for the revaluation, of 0.74 mil increase. So again, a fraction of a mil. Offset again, we have some revenue there that we received from the state that helped off with the mill rate. So our new mill rate would be 9.17 mils. It used to be 11.19 mils, and before that, if you recall, we were up near 14. Yep. So we've gone from 14 in a few years down to 9.17. That's a pretty good move for everybody. And I think if people go back 5-10 years, we're probably about flat. So, I mean a flat like as in your taxes, not just the mill rate, because the mill rate is lower than it used to be, 5 years ago. So, again, not a bad budget year, really. If you think of budgets as expenditures offset by revenues, challenging, very challenging environment to work in, but we're doing a great job heading it off and presenting a budget to the people. They should be very happy with this budget. I'm a finance guy. I'm a cheap guy, and I think there's a lot of value here. Yeah, taxes are going up, but not really at the rate of inflation the last 3 years for our community. So that's what you're looking at. We're going up at a slower rate than inflation, and that's a very good accomplishment for us.
Well, that's a huge accomplishment, and it's great that you're a budget guy, because that's just what we need in somebody who's managing our town, and the communication with all the different boards and commissions and so on, to make sure everybody's talking about the same thing. So it's very, very important, and getting that communication out to the public so they understand that, oh, my mill rate's going to go down because my property values went up. So that's not going to mean a big increase in my tax bill. So having that kind of communication, and of course you also mentioned the fact that it's a shift. Some of it shifts based on the values and so on and so forth. Wherever the biggest increase in value is, you're going to have more of a shift. And you mentioned last time the business community had some not as great a time, and maybe we'll have a better time this time, if I'm understanding what you said, Jim.
Yes, we're on the same page there. And again, there's some things we just can't control. The pensions, for example, they go up and down. We have very well-funded pensions, and this is something that's been going on in Windham for years. We're over 90% on many of our pensions. We have, I have 7 unions that report to me, and they have, we have good pensions, which attracts good talent to our community and keeps it here. And that's another reason we succeed so much, is we have some of the best people in the business doing the work in all these different departments. Well, we have a pension to help with them, to recruit and retain them, but it's so well funded that a lot of the money that's needed to pay those pensions, it's through the investment interest and investment experience that we get from all the money we have in the bank, which has been very well managed over these years. So, but it fluctuates from year to year. So we look at really a year in the past when the actuaries are trying to calculate what our contribution to the pension was. And this last year, we look at the end of 22, because we didn't quite, when the calculation came out, it wasn't quite the end, all the numbers weren't in for 23. Well, the end of 2022, if you recall, the stock market was down, and so were our investments. Well, what happened is the end of 23, they roared right back, and we were way up at the end of 23. But the calculation is based on a prior year, and we had to increase our pension contribution, which is part of the reason our budgets are up a little bit. The hope is, and the expectation is, that when we do our budgets next year, that number is going to go down, because of the investment experience that we had in 2023 was fantastic. We're seeing a very good return, of course, in 2024. So again, all is well, but that's a little bump we had to overcome. Insurance, of course, like everybody else. We have a high deductible self-insurance plan for most of our staff in the general government in the city, and that is very efficient. But we do see increases like everybody else, maybe not so much as others, but we do see increases. Everybody's got good insurance. I know some people are concerned that when you say high deductible or self-insurance, that maybe we're not giving our good employees a good plan. It's a fantastic plan. We make a little contribution to that, like most employers make their employees make. But it's very efficient. I'm very happy with my plan, and I have the same plan that everybody else has. So it's all good, and nothing but good news. And that was my summary for the budget. So if you have any questions or any other comments, I'd love to hear them.
I just have a comment. We're less than a minute to go, and I just want to thank you, Jim, for being on the air with us to go over all these details about the budget. And, we may even ask you to come back one more time before the referendum on May 14th, and we'll see how that works out. But in any event, I know when we hired you that you were a guy with a big heart who cared about people, but you were also very frugal. And in fact, I used to refer to Charlie Critch, who was on the town council, who I love the guy. He's a great member of the town council, and sometimes I would refer to him as a cheapskate. But he was very good at it. And between you and him, you guys have done a great job of managing the town's finances, and I think we're in terrific shape. And the people of the town of Windham, I think, appreciate that. So I'm expecting a budget that passes by a large margin on the 14th of May. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Jim.
Thank you
Thanks for
both.
being on the show. We really appreciate all your work, and we appreciate your being with us this evening.
We'll be
Great.
back next week with another great show. Thank you.